The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to today's webinar, Sales Scripting, with guest speaker John Blake. How to script your entire sales process to increase your sales and conversions without sounding pitchy or pushy. What you'll learn in this webinar today is proven sales phraseology to close more business faster, the one phrase that kills sales instantly, the 7 words that instantly destroy trust and what to replace them with, and 2 templates to use in your written and verbal communication that are proven to increase sales. At the end of this presentation, we'll have a dedicated question and answer session. You'll be placed on mute throughout the presentation, but if you have any problems with your connection or display, please use your question or chat function so I can help you out. Our guest speaker today is John Blake. John is the owner of specialist sales training company Sales Breakthrough Solutions, as well as an author of the book How to Increase Sales Using Proven Follow-Up Strategies. For the past 27 years, John Blake has been a highly successful salesperson, sales manager, business owner, author and sales and marketing consultant. Over the last 10 years, John's proven formula for cracking open the vault to unlock huge sales growth has been applied in hundreds of businesses in 34 industries. John's approach is unique because every sales strategy and idea you'll learn has been thoroughly road tested and proven by him first. I'm now going to change over to John. John, can you accept the link, please?
Certainly. Main screen, yep. Okay. All right, so if I can just get this on. Yeah, there we go. Cool, awesome. Okay, so really looking forward to today, and really today is all about how to look at the words that you and your team both say and write when you are dealing with potential clients to get the highest conversion rate possible. So in the last session we talked about the Strike Sales Framework and we talked about follow-up. What we're going to be talking about in today's session is really going deeper into the actual language and the words that you and your team use both in your written communication and in your verbal communication, and really how to do that without sounding creepy or pitchy, if that makes sense. So there is a massive distinction between having the right things to say and then the way that we say them and having them come across in a way that people see them as authentic. And in Australia especially, people are fairly highly tuned in terms of what is contrived and what is inauthentic, and so it is, and makes a lot of sense in terms of putting time and effort into making sure that people perceive that in the right way. So the overarching idea on what we're going to talk about today is I'm going to explain why most sales scripts suck, why they do sound inauthentic, and why people do tend to get turned off in certain sales situations because of that. I'm going to walk you through the 5 keys to getting your sales conversions working consistently. I'm going to give you some proven conversational type phraseology for different areas in your sales process, and I'm going to show you how to get some more help at the end if you require that. So the first part that we're going to talk about is really who this is for. So the context that this applies to mostly is people who are selling business to business. So people who are, as opposed to a retail type context, these are people who are selling business to business. So it is perfectly suited to the transport industry and really anyone else that's selling business to business. Is it the only way to do this? No. If you do a search on Google on sales training or sales techniques, you will get 28 million pages that you can choose from. So it's certainly not going to be the only way, but it is a way that is proven, and it is a way that has been tested both by myself and by the clients that I work with. So the first thing that we kind of need to really look at is this whole idea of scripting, because there can be a lot of baggage around the whole idea of having a set of words or some phraseology around how you actually talk to clients. And the main thing with scripting is that if you think, well, the definition of scripting in the dictionary is essentially words in sequence that make sense. So as simply as the dictionary will tell us, what scripting is words in sequence that make sense. And so what we know is that every film, play, TV show that you ever loved, like all your favourite movies, all your favourite TV shows, all your favourite plays that you've ever been to see, are essentially all scripted. So people who don't use scripts are essentially still using words in sequence that make sense, but they're just not particularly effective ones. So there are certain combinations of words that you can use, put them into a sequence that work better than others. They just do. You know, they're what I call magic words, and these things can be applied regardless of whether you have a particular type personality, so whether you're someone who is a more talented or gifted type salesperson than somebody else, but they are words that if you use them in the right way, you can get a result. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about why we would want to have a more deliberate way to use and apply the right words in the conversations that we build with our clients. So the first thing that we need to look at is, you know, why is it that certain scripts don't work? And we've touched on this already, but the main reason is that they simply come across as insincere. And there's a couple of reasons why that happens, which we'll certainly explore in more detail. But the other thing is that often, if the person who's using the script that's been created doesn't feel good about it, it can come across as being timid. And in most cases, it's because they either haven't learned or they haven't actually practiced using the script, or they're not speaking. There's a difference between reading from a script and actually speaking to a script and internalizing it. So just like the best movies that you go and see, they don't sound scripted because the actor has actually gotten so good at delivering the actual lines that it sounds real. And that's what we need to have happen. We need to practice them, we need to internalize them, and sometimes we need to change them so that it suits with the way that we speak. So whenever I'm putting sales phraseology and words together for a client, I always make sure that we internalize them and we tweak them so that they sound like the individual who's actually delivering them rather than they sound like the person who actually wrote them. So there's an integration process that takes place when we're coming up with proven phraseology for clients. And so if they sound insincere and they sound timid when they're using them, especially if it's being used on the phone, which I understand, most these days, a lot of sales conversations are taking place over the phone, it really does make it hard to convert. And when you have low conversion rates, as we talked about or certainly touched on in the last webinar, you do find it very difficult to scale and you find it difficult to grow your business. So what you want, on the other hand, is you want a genuine process. You want genuine dialogue between yourself and your potential client for them to feel comfortable, for them to feel confident in what it is that you do. You want your people to feel confident when they're using the phraseology. You certainly don't want them to be promising anything that you guys can't deliver. And when that happens, what you end up with is a high converting process. And what that will give you is fast growth, but it'll also give you predictable growth, because if you've got a roadmap, a framework that you can put new people in front of that you know will deliver them a consistent result, you can get fast, predictable growth. Now, in the last session, we talked about the conversion ladder, and I understand that there might be some people on the call today that weren't on the last webinar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to touch briefly on the conversion ladder just to revisit that, because it's important that we sort of look at that and go, okay, well, you know, where are we at right now? The first step to being able to address anything is really to address where we are at right now. So if you have seen this before, then that's great. But what I will do is just quickly share it with you again, so that you can start to get a sense of exactly where you are at, and also what's possible as it relates to your particular business. So the sales conversion ladder essentially works like this. So you've got down the bottom, you've got companies that have got no sales process whatsoever. Above that, you've got companies that have a sales process, but it is largely ineffective, or they might have an actual sales process, but no one actually uses it. Above that, you've got a generic process, which they may have learned in a book or at a seminar, but it's not necessarily customized for their particular business. Above that, you've got a structured process, which is one that has been designed for a particular business. But beyond that, beyond having a structured process, you can take it to the next level by doing a number of different things. You can actually start to test different things. You can start to refine the actual process. And what that gives you is the confidence where you've literally got a proven process. So down the bottom here, if you haven't got a sales process, in most cases that'll deliver you between, say, 5 and 10% conversion. An ineffective process will still give you a result, but it'll probably be in about the 10 to 15% range. Above that, you've got a generic process, which will give you about 15 to 30%. A structured process can deliver between 30 and 60% conversion. And if you really get it right and continue to work it and add various tweaks to it in order for it to convert better, you can end up with between 60 and 90%. So with the people that are on the call right now, and I did ask this question in the previous webinar that we ran, I'd be really interested to know, what is your current conversion rate? So if you could just type that into the chat box, it'd be much appreciated. It's just really good to get a sense of where you're at in terms of this conversion part of what we're talking about. So if I can just quickly get you to do that, that'd be great, and then we can keep moving. What do we got, Karen? Who's typing?
It's
Wendy. Sorry, Wendy. I keep looking at Karen on the thing.
Nobody's put anything.
No?
Oh, yes, they have. 5 to 10%.
Okay.
Jamie was actually in the last session as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's
did he write 5 to 10%?
Yeah, 5 to 10%.
Okay, great. Anyone else type anything?
No, not yet. No, I think they're a bit shy today.
Okay. No worries. Well, look, the good news is that if you can get this stuff right, you can double and in some cases triple your conversion rates. And the best thing about that is that it will happen without really having to increase any of the expenses that you've got in any other part of the business. So with the same amount of lead flow, you can actually get to a point where you can double if not triple your actual conversion rate. And that will have a similar type effect on your profit, of course. So the average, probably an average, like rule of thumb, benchmark type conversion rate is normally about 20 to 25%. So that would be this point here. But there's certainly no reason why everybody has to have a conversion rate like that. There are a number of what we call leverage points which we can add to a sales process which can dramatically increase the amount of conversations that you can turn into clients, a number of different leverage points. So in the last webinar we talked about follow-up. That's one of the leverage points, and it's a very easy one to teach, which is why I talked about it. But there are other parts of your sales process that you can look at that can also increase the likelihood of more people coming on board. So in terms of where we're at right now, I'll go back to where we were, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you an example. It's like a scripting example. So in the business that I worked with in Sydney, I was the National Sales and Marketing Manager, and so I was actually only 22 years old when I ran this company. The company was called Arnett, and the brand that I had been working with, Arnett, had actually been thrown out of 4 of the major stockists in Australia, and it had been, there really wasn't anyone in that national sales management role, and because of that, there really wasn't a lot of the clients essentially weren't being looked after particularly well, and because of that, the brand had been thrown out of 4 of the major accounts in Australia, and so essentially none of them really wanted it, which wasn't a good thing, because obviously the 80-20 rule, 20% of your client base is in most cases going to deliver you 80% of your result. So one of the first things that I had to address was to get these guys back on board, and it actually went a little bit deeper than that. The company was performing particularly badly, and the banks were about to come in, repossess the stock, lock all the doors, and essentially send everybody home. So I sort of started this role in a very, walked into a fairly stressed type situation. So I had a couple of things. I was faced with the impossible task of growing sales without having really any of the major clients on board, and most of them were interstate, and because of the fact that we weren't exactly killing it, I had to try and work out how to do that without jumping on an aeroplane. So essentially what the scenario is this, an unknown person who was essentially 22 years old that they'd never met had to really get them back into a brand that they swore that they'd never carry again. So it was a pretty major type task to sort of get this done. So what made the difference? Well, what I did is I planned out their biggest objection, and I designed a conversation on exactly what to say. So I designed the phraseology on exactly what it is that I needed to say, and very quickly I was able to get all 4 of these major stockists back on board literally within weeks. And once they were back on board, what we then do is we trained our reps on the exact phraseology to use with our retailers. So we designed conversations that our reps would have with our retailers. We trained our actual retail staff on the exact phraseology to use with the customers who are walking in to help them to be able to convert more of the customers that they were selling sunglasses to. So at that point, sunglasses were a relatively new category in surf shops, and not many of the staff knew how to actually sell them. So we actually trained the actual floor staff on how to sell sunglasses to the general public. And so all major clients, with our help, started ordering massive volumes of sunglasses. It just had this exponential effect. We trained our reps on how to try and get the retailers to stock more product, but we also train the actual floor staff on how to sell sunglasses to the general public. And we really did that primarily with giving them the exact phraseology to use in designing these conversations. And so what that meant is that sales went from $750,000 per year to $6.5 million per year within 3 years. And then that business was sold for around about $2.2 million, not long after that. So it was a massive, massive shift, and it really all boiled down to words in sequence that make sense and designing specific conversations that our reps could use and that our retailers could use with their actual customers. So another really good example of this is I had a call from a guy who had been the top salesman in this coffee franchising company, and he rang me, and he'd left the coffee franchising company, and he wanted to start selling this new solution that he'd come up with. It was his own business, where it was like a video screen concierge in hotels. So it was like an interactive touch screen console in the foyer of hotels that guests in the hotels could go and use to work out what they were going to do when they were on holiday in Western Australia. And this guy was like a really good salesman. He's like, he'd absolutely broken every single record in this coffee franchise business. And he rang me and he said, look, I've obviously done really well in this coffee franchise setup, but they had a system that I was using, and I don't have a system for this new thing that I want to sell, and I don't know how to do it, and I need you to come help me. So it's just bizarre. This guy was a really highly successful salesperson, but in the absence of actually having a system to use, he was absolutely at sea. He had no idea what he was going to do. So we literally built a process for him to sell the new product. So it's a classic example of the fact that systems can be really powerful in growing a business. And this guy was really well presented. He had a great attitude, but he just wasn't a natural salesperson. So it just goes to show that you can get somebody who's not a natural gift of the gab type salesperson with the right attitude and put them in front of a system and teach them a system, and they can get a predictable result. So what I'm going to do now is in fact, what I might ask you is just, so from what we've talked about so far, what would be, what's one thing that you have found to be valuable? What's, one thing, if I could just get someone to type something into the just give you a couple of minutes to do that. Any action, Wendy?
Oh, you're good. Not yet. Yes, I have one comment. Have a system.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, is that having a system's great. Having some flexibility within that system to adapt for people's personalities is important to make sure that it sounds authentic. So that's what I would add to that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share with you 5 key principles that we need to consider to really make scripts work, to make phraseology work. So the first one is mindset. So what we know about mindset is that only 20% of your communication on the phone is the actual words that you say. 80% of your communication on the phone is linked to your tonality, the cadence, the timbre in your voice, the volume in your voice. All of those things all show up in the 80% of your communication that isn't the words that you speak. And so probably the best example of this is that if you have a really close friend and you talk to them on the phone and there's something wrong with them, so they're upset about something or they're sick or whatever, it's like straight away it's like, what's wrong? you can hear it. You can hear it in their voice. Such a classic example of the way that communication works. So in as much as the words are important, mindset is massively important. So how do we deal with mindset? Well, the best way to deal with mindset is to really look at the motivation. So often people sound timid or insincere because they haven't examined the motivation behind what it is that they're doing. So an example of this is really sort of saying, okay, well, so why am I contacting this person? Why am I talking to this person? Well, it's because I know that the solution that we provide for people creates massive value. It will free up heaps of time. It will allow them to make more money. It will provide a more efficient process for them in their business, which will take a lot of stress off them. It's making sure that you're clear on the outcome of what it is that you deliver in your own head before you start talking to somebody. Because if you don't do that, what you end up with is this whole, I'm just trying to, I'm trying to sell somebody something. Unless you actually examine and get clear on your own motivation, what your mind can default to is, I'm trying to sell this person something. And so it's such a massive part of getting clarity on exactly what it is that you're doing, so that your communication comes across as sincere and authentic in everything that you do. So how do you do that? Well, your voice tone, your pitch, the speed at which you talk, as we've talked about, is literally 80% of your communication. But you need that motivation and that mindset right to make sure that all of that lines up. And what that gives you is sincerity. What you also need is detachment. So not being too attached to the outcome is also very, very important. When you are talking with clients, be it on the phone or face-to-face, if there is any element of desperation in your approach, it literally creates a fear response in the person on the other end of the phone. So if you're a salesperson, you've got a lot of pressure on you from up above to sell more, and there's desperation in your approach or in anything as it relates to the way that you come across, it can literally create a fear response in the person that you're talking to. And as soon as there's a fear response triggered in the person that you're talking to, there's absolutely no way in the world they're going to buy. So it's a very, very important part. Second part is your offer. So one of the best things that you can do as it relates to your offer is put some work into the who. So who is it that you can help the best? Who is it that is the type of client that you can provide the most value for? And then the other considerations around who is who's easiest to deal with, who creates the least amount of grief, who pays on time, and who is in an industry where there's some growth. So like rather than trying to deal with people that are in a situation where they're not growing or they don't have a clear and present need for what it is that you do, put some work into who. Who is your ideal client? Where do they hang out? Create a list of them. That's a massive thing. And so it all really does dovetail into your actual offer, because if you know who you are and you know how you can help them the most and you know what they need the most, then that will relate specifically to your offer. The other thing is the 20% rule. So if you have a particular service that you offer, what we know is that 20% of your clients, of your list of clients, of your potential clients, will choose a premium version of what it is that you do if you offer it. So 20% of any list of clients, so let's say you've got a list of clients and they're all buying a service that's $10,000. Just be really basic in terms of this particular maths. So you've got a list of clients and they all buy something off you that is $10,000. Let's say you've got 100 clients and they're all buying this thing and it's $10,000. What we know is that 20% of that list of 100 people will buy a premium version of your particular product or service if you offer it. So 20% of those people could potentially buy a $20,000 or a $30,000 version of your particular product or service, where, that offers, more support, more service. I mean, obviously you have to put some time and effort into coming up with what that offer looks like, and we, essentially help a lot of people to do that. But what we know is that you can literally create a premium version of what it is that you sell. So just like with Toyota, they have the GX, they have the GXL, and they have the Grande. They know that 20% of the people that come in and buy a particular model of Toyota will choose the Grande. And those people will choose it, in many cases, because it's the best. Some people just like to choose the best thing. And that's why you know that 20% of your particular clientele will choose a premium version of what it is that you do if you offer it. And this can become a really good slack adjuster. It's what's called a slack adjuster in your business, where you offer a Rolls-Royce version of what it is that you do, knowing that there are certain people that are simply going to pick it. So as an example of this, real-life example of this, the ANZ logo. Now, it's been a while now since they changed it, but the ANZ logo was changed. They added that sort of lotusy thing, and they changed the typeface a bit, and it's got, a slightly more diagonal line underneath it. Now, how much do you reckon that they paid to upgrade that logo? Have a guess. Perhaps just punch it into the chat box. How much do you think that ANZ paid to change that logo? And the new one, especially the typeface, is really not that different to what it was before, and they added that lotusy thing. You can answer this too, Wendy.
Well, I'm actually thinking about the BHP Bulletin when they changed it to those 3 blobs. I don't know if you noticed it, the 3 blobs. I know they had about 6 people, because I was working with BHP Bulletin at the time, and they had about 6 people locked in a room for 2 weeks to come up with that, and it cost them millions. I've got one response here from my favourite, 30 million.
30 million?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want to have a guess too?
I'm going to say, I'll say about 15 million.
15. You know what? You're actually spot on. That's how much they paid. So in as much as they also had to put together a communication, campaign in terms of, advertising and all the rest of it. So they had to rebrand. They needed to advertise out into the market, and take care of all their rebranding across all of their different advertising platforms. The whole thing was a $15 million exercise. Now, you could get that exact logo done on Odesk or Fiverr for probably about between 50 and 100 bucks. Yet they paid probably, the actual logo or the branding component, could easily have been, of that 15 million, could probably have been about, I reckon about maybe 6 million. So the point is that there is literally a market for any price point. So there are people that are willing, so why does someone want to pay 10 grand to fly business class? Why does someone want to pay $250,000 to buy a car? There is literally a market for almost any price point. But obviously the offer has to be right, and the you need to have the numbers of people that are buying an existing product or service before you can offer a premium version, so that you've got the numbers to be able to take it up. So it's just a good way of sort of expanding what's possible. A lot of people think that there is downward pressure on price in every market, and in many cases it's just not the case. So putting some work into who and looking at the potential of offering a premium version of what you do, putting some work into who we talk about the Dream 100, so come up with a list of 100 people that you're not dealing with right now that you would ideally love to work with, and who you can best help, and who are the best no-drama clients that you deal with right now. And if you want a direct strategy that you can use to do that, to make a direct play to those people, that is a particular function that my business facilitates for a number of companies that they want a way to go direct, but they don't want to cold call or cold email. And so that's one of the things that we do to help people to make a connection with those big clients. So that is certainly something I can help you with later on down the track if it is that you want. So in terms of scripting, the next thing we need to look at is magic words. So there are literally certain phrases that simply work, and it's quite uncanny. There are, in most businesses, there are what I call system-based phrases, and there are personality-based phrases. So one of the things that we do when we work with clients is we'll look at the top performing salesperson, and we'll actually map their process. But when you map a salesperson's process, you need to look at the certain things that they say that are systems-based, and a systems-based piece of phraseology is something that you could teach to somebody who's new and they could get the same result with it. A personality-based type piece of phraseology is something that only someone with a certain personality can get away with saying. So it's important to make a distinction between the two. So that's an important part of it, is what is systems-based, so what is it that I can teach to pretty much anyone who joins this organisation and they can get the same result, and what is personality-based, which is perhaps the only thing that the owner can get away with saying, or perhaps something that just this particular individual, he's the only person that could really get away with saying that. You couldn't teach that to somebody else and they could get the same type result. So an example of some magic words were some ones that we came up with for a client that I work with who is a particularly successful debt collection agency. And we came up with some phraseology for her that she still uses, that she finds just really creates urgency in some of the conversations that she has with clients. So that phraseology for her was when they're talking to somebody about a debt, so people tend to ring up and they're a little bit emotional, they've got someone who hasn't paid them for 120, 180 days. And one of the pieces of phraseology that we came up with that's worked particularly well for them is when they are making their recommendation, they say, well, look, so that we can minimize your loss, what I recommend is that we get this set up and we get the process happening for you straight away. So in the enroll part of the process, and we'll touch on the Strike Sales Framework later on in today's session, but when they're confirming their choice to go ahead, what they're saying is, well, look, what needs to happen next is, so that we can minimize your loss on this, let's start the process straight away. We'll get you set up in our system, and we can get our girls, calling, these clients that owe you money straight away. So just the use of that phrase alone, let's minimize your loss and get this set up straight away, has been huge. I mean, that's like a 1 or a 2% thing that's created a massive result and a massive shift in her conversion rates. And so the other part of it, and we just alluded to it then, is the actual close. So what's interesting is that again, if you go on Google and you search for closes, you'll probably end up with close to 20 or 25 or 28 million, maybe even a lot more pages that are dedicated to sales trainers that have got 400 different closes, 500 different closes. And if there's one thing that I could share with you that I've found that works particularly well, if you do the first part of the process, you get your phraseology right, your phraseology positions you powerfully throughout the conversation that you have with your clients. When you get to the end, all you really need to say is, look, what needs to happen next is, and then just insert the next step of your process. So you've had a conversation with a client, you know what the next step is, often they don't. One of the best things that you can say is, okay, well, what needs to happen next is we'll get you set up, and then we can, get this happening for you straight away, or, we'll get you set up in our system, or I'll come back to you with a plan based on what we've talked about it. Today it'll have a couple of different options in it for you, and we can keep things moving. So that can be a huge shift in people's mindsets, because often people often up around asking for a commitment, asking for somebody to go to the next stage, and often they don't get a result on that because they simply don't know how to phrase it in a way that makes it easy for the client to literally make that next step. Okay, so one of the other things that you need to consider is to get rid of cliches and psychophobic words in the communication that you use, both in your writing and in your actual conversations. And the other one there is jargon and acronyms. They can also be red flags or disconnects in your sales process that can cause bottlenecks or people dropping out of your process. So a couple of examples of psychophobic words, and I'll give you a bigger list in a minute, is one of them is simply saying things like contract. So when you use the word contract, people have associations around certain words. So when you say sign a contract, that phrase in and of itself has very negative type connotations with a lot of people. So that's an example of a psychophobic word. I'm going to share some more with you in a second, but that's a pretty good example. Using the word cost, using the word pay. So all of those words, even though they're normal type, words that you would use in a commerce context, they have negative connotations around them. Jargon, corporate speak, the acronyms and cliches, things like when you say, thinking outside the box, or someone asks you a question and you reply with, well, how long is a piece of string? They're all just very overused type corporate cliches, and they can create disconnects in the mind of the person that you're talking to. People do business with humans, so it's important that you and the people who work with you sound like one. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share with you some of these different type words to avoid and what to replace them with. So let me just quickly do that. There's a slight delay, but here we go. Righto, so I'll change the colour. Righto, so we've got this one, right. So I call these the dirty dozen. So up here we've got cost. That is a particularly prickly one. If at all possible, replace cost with valued at. The next one is just simply using the word thousands. So there's the psychology of numbers. When you use the word thousands, so if you're saying the word if you have to say the word or describe the number 4,500, you can either say that the cost of that is $4,500, or you can say that is, and that option is valued at 4,500. So which one sounds bigger, the first one or the second one? Wendy, what do you think?
Oh, definitely the second one sounds better.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that.
So little things like that, you know, they're all just 1%ers, but they can all add up to a big difference in your conversions if you've got everyone on the same page. It just creates a different experience in the mind of the person that you're talking to. The next one is just the use of the word dollars. So just use numbers instead. So a client of mine has a photo gallery, an art gallery in Sydney, and I heard his staff saying, "Oh yeah, that one's $197." And I said, "Well, take out the dollars and just say that one's $197." And so he started doing that, and it's changed the conversion and the amount of people that are actually buying that particular item. Because again, it's a different experience when they hear that as opposed to the first one. They just use numbers. The next one is order. So again, when I worked with the sunglass company, we got them to stop saying order, and instead of saying order, they would say organise. Why? Because as a retailer, the last thing that you want to do is order too much. I want to cut my orders back. You know, I don't want to order too much. I want to order less than last year. But when you say organise, it's just a totally different connotation. The next one is contract. Contract sounds like I'm getting locked into something. You can change that to plan or agreement. Signature. So instead of saying, "I need your signature down there," you can simply say, "I just need your autograph." Or you can say, "I just need you to okay the paperwork." Next one, I had a guy that was actually an advertising guy that I worked with. He used to talk about, "Oh, you'll get that one locked in." You know, he's like putting in an advertising campaign. "Oh, we'll lock that in." It's like, no, don't say that. It's like, let's arrange that for you. Let's get that dialed in. Because no one wants to be locked into anything. One of the biggest no-nos, in fact, I'll come back to that, is there's an absolute doozy. So this is the one thing that obviously we talked about at the start that you should never do, but we'll come back to it. I'll just give you some of these other ones, right? So a quote or a proposal, eliminate that, create an action plan. Or a fee estimate. Language is so powerful, it's just incredible when you really start to think about it. Sign, I think we talked about. Complete, so another alternative for sign. Even the word meeting. You can make a sales meeting seem a lot less threatening by simply arranging. I don't want to arranging a meeting sounds very, very formal and very contrived, and it sounds like you're going to try and sell me something. It's like, so don't organise a meeting. Organise a time to call past. Because who comes past? Who organises a time to come past? A friend. Who organises a meeting? Someone who wants to sell you something. Again, very subtle things, but they all can make a massive difference. Follow up. Like, never ever say to someone, "Oh, I'm following up." No, I'm not. I'm checking in. When you're talking to existing clients about some of the other clients that you've got, never say, "Oh, I sold that guy something." It's like, no, I helped that guy. I helped that company. Okay, so another example, there's spent. It's like that person spent money with me. No, they invested with me. I never pitched anybody anything. I recommended. And here's another really good one. If you're talking to somebody and you say, "Oh, never say, 'Oh, that person just cancelled a meeting with me.'" No one ever cancelled any meeting with you. They rescheduled. And the big one that you should never do at any cost is to ever use the phrase, to be honest. Why? Because what does that mean? So if you're saying to somebody, oh, well, to be honest, what does that imply? What's implied there?
That I'm not lying.
Wendy?
Yeah, I'm not lying.
What's that?
I'm not lying.
You're not lying today. No, but you're not lying today, but what do you normally do?
What do you mean? What do you mean? Say it again.
Okay, so if you say to somebody, well, to be honest, it's like I'm being honest with you today, but what do I normally do?
Ah, getcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
so
yes.
That's a real.
But can I just say?
Yeah.
With all of these words that you used, how easily our brain takes over the left-hand side of that list, as opposed to the other side. So, I mean, I'm left-handed, you know.
Yeah.
That's going to be a bit of a shift, really, because they're words that you use just as general everyday wording. So to actually go to the other side of the page and have to try and reprogram.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, as a salesperson, I'm speaking because I've been doing sales for a long time. So to actually reprogram your brain to change the wording, I think that's magnificent.
Yeah, it's huge, and it can make a massive difference. And what it is that you're also doing is you are creating separation and a point of difference between what it is that the experience that they have with you as opposed to the experience that they have with other people that they may be talking to.
Sure.
So, you know, you're creating separation, you're positioning yourself differently through the way that you communicate and through and you're controlling the message that you send out into the marketplace.
Sure.
So these are, you know, these are all very, very powerful things that can, you know, that can take place. The next part of it is syntax. So syntax is the order in which things happen. So sometimes you can change a result simply by changing the order in which questions are asked. So as an example of this, you know, often people when they, especially when you're presenting fee or the investment for your particular product or service, it can make a massive difference if you present fee first and then talk about all of the different things that they get for that fee, as opposed to presenting all of the different things that they get for that fee and then presenting fee, because you've actually added value first. So it's the, you know, so sometimes the, you know, one of the biggest shifts that we can create is instead of putting together a plan or a fee estimate, so to be my own best example of my own best advice, given the exercise that we just did on language, one of the best things that you can do is to actually present the actual plan to the client face-to-face, or present the plan to the client over the telephone, so that you can actually go through the value that they're going to get before they actually look at the fee. Because if you just send a proposal to somebody, if you just email a proposal to somebody, the first thing they're going to do is just look at the actual, they're going to look at the cost. Whereas if the first time they see it is with you actually explaining all the things that they're going to get for the cost that they're going to, or the investment that they're going to make, then it can create a different experience in terms of how they perceive the value of what it is that you're going to do. So the order in which things happen in your sales process, if you sometimes we can just simply change the order in which things happen, and it can change the conversion rate and the result. So that's a very, very important distinction in looking at people's sales process. The second one is really the energy that you bring. So if you can be more relaxed, if you can have, you know, if you can have be more playful and you can be more conversational, that can also have a massive difference in the way that your communication is received by the person that's on the other end. And what that does is it creates a jar-free zone, which means that there's nothing in there that sort of clangs. There's nothing in there that's going to cause a disconnect. Either the language that you use, the delivery, the syntax, so the order in which questions are asked or the order in which different things are presented in your client's journey with you, are all designed to just avoid this whole disconnect or the jar effect, which essentially what that creates is really just a natural flow toward a yes or a no, because sometimes it's, you're not a fit, and sometimes the client doesn't, it's not what they need, or for whatever reason the answer is simply just a no. And a no is infinitely better than a maybe. So if you can get a no in an actual sales conversation as opposed to a maybe that might mean that particular conversation goes on for months and never goes anywhere and just takes up space in your funnel, getting a no early is often better than having a maybe that goes on for months. And the other thing is really just to, as I said before, disconnect from the outcome and just really concentrate on serving and seeing how you might be able to help. If we can disconnect from this motivation to just make a sale or close a sale, and really just focus on the value or focus on the client, that in and of itself can increase our conversion rates. So one of the examples that I wanted to share with you relates to the Strike Sales Framework, but what I firstly wanted to do was give you these two templates in terms of how you articulate what it is that you actually do. And so how are we going for time, Wendy?
You have 2 minutes left.
2 minutes, okay. Well, I guess I better be quick then. Okay, so we may not get a chance to tell Jack's story, but I'll give you these templates because these are great. These are really good. So let me just get a new thingo, and so there's a couple of different ways of doing this. So USP. So USP stands for Unique Selling Proposition, and there are a couple of different ways that you can do this. The first one is what we call the benefit first way, and the second one is the pace and lead. So USP stands for Unique Selling Proposition, and it is often referred to in different ways, but essentially what it does is it just allows you to articulate what it is that you do in a more powerful way. So it allows you to articulate the value that you provide in a more powerful way. So the first template is the benefit first template, and what that looks like is we help, and then you insert your target client there. 2, and then you insert the benefit that your particular product or service delivers, so the end result, by, and then you have a brief description of your particular process. So that's the one that we call benefit first. The second one is what's called, so an example of that would be, so if I was to use an example from my own world, I would say we help companies to increase their sales and profit by helping them to develop a high converting sales process. Right? So that would be an example that I could use in my own world. The second one is called pace and lead. So a pace is something that the client already believes, and the lead is something that you essentially want them to believe. So an example of a PACE would be you know how. So if I was to try and think one up for the transport industry, and forgive me if I get this a little bit wrong, but I'm going to try and come up with an example that's specific for your particular business.
Use underwater
so
knitting, John, because I use it all the time.
What's that?
Use underwater knitting because I use it all the time.
Underwater knitting?
Yeah. I sell courses.
Do you?
Oh, God, John. Anyway, go on, carry on.
You threw me with underwater knitting. Okay, so you know how. So if we were to use one from the transport and logistics industry, so what's the, I guess one of the things that you could come up with is, you know how in many companies making sure that freight arrives on time is one of the most important things. So would that be accurate? If you were to ask that to most of the clients that some of these guys have, what type of response would you get?
Yes.
You would get a yes. So that is the, in this situation, that is the PACE. And then the lead is, well, what we do is, and then you put the actual benefit of your particular product or service. So you would say, well, what we do is we provide a guaranteed on-time freight forwarding service that has 4 different check measures to make sure that freight arrives on time, and we also have a quality insurance in terms of the condition that the freight arrives in, something like that. So the reason it works is that the second, so this is obviously the first part of it, the second question or the second statement is sitting on a foundation of agreement. So if I was to use an example from my world, I would say, well, you know how companies are always looking for ways that they can increase their sales. That would be the PACE. And the lead would be, well, what we do is we help companies to increase their sales and profit by helping them to refine their sales process to make it convert better, so that more of the conversations that they have with their clients result in them coming on board as a paying client. So that are the 2 different templates. So you've got the PACE and lead template, and you've also got the benefit first template. So we help. So in here is your target. So your target to the benefit by the process. Okay, so with the time that we've got left, I'm certainly happy to open it up for any questions that anyone might have. And then beyond today, the other thing I wanted to offer was, really, in terms of the scripts that you'll need, if you do cold calling, which I don't recommend, and I have this direct-to-corporate process really allows you to not have to do cold calls, but if you do have to do it, it is valid, but it is really the red-headed stepchild of lead generation. It's just very ineffective. But if you have to do it, you obviously need a cold call script. Framing scripts, so how to frame the conversations that you have. The needs analysis strike sales process, so how to customize that framework for your particular business. How you actually present your quotes or your plans, as we hopefully will now all be calling them, is important. So the way that you actually present your fee estimate or your action plans to your client, there's phraseology that you need around that. There's phraseology about the phone message scripts that you leave for people. Referral scripts, so how to ask for referrals, that all needs to be deliberate. Testimonial scripts for print and video in terms of if you're getting clients to give you testimonials, how do you do that? Appointment making scripts, objection handling scripts, client feedback scripts, so what to do if someone decides that they want to leave you, so how do you ring up and ask for feedback? Customer complaint scripts, so how to deal with all that. So what I can do with you guys, if you're interested, is I'd be happy to do a script analysis on a quick call. If you do want that, you can apply at that particular web address, so www.johnblakescall.com. So it stands for John Blake's S-Call, which is strategycall.com. But with the remaining time that we've got left, happy to open it up for Q&A.
Also, I'd like to add that last webinar, John offered a free 15-minute free telephone implementation. If you would like to take advantage of that, please go to the survey at the end of the webinar, and I'll make sure that John gets in touch with you. Otherwise, please go to the link that John just put up, and he will call you. Excuse me. Has anybody got any questions for today's webinar? Thank you, John. That was really interesting. Thank you so much. I've written everything down.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And John will be continuing this series of marketing and sales strategies in the new year. Obviously, he's going to have a very well-deserved Christmas break, and we'll be back around the end of January towards the beginning of February, and I'll start organising webinars again with him. A big thank you is extended to our guest speaker, John, for his presentation, Sales Scripting, and we look forward to you joining us again in 2017 for our next webinars. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to contact me and I'll pass on the details. There will be a survey at the end of this webinar. Please fill it out. If you would like John to get in contact with you, please let me know and I'll make sure he does so. Otherwise, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for attending, and a very safe Christmas, and speak to you again next year. All right, thank you very much.